We're back. We're back. We've been on a little hiatus, but things happen. It's okay. It's spring break. Hey, we're back. It's March Madness. Bobby Swofford, Blair Cartwright with you. How are you, Mr. Swofford?
I'm good. I'm charging the batteries as we speak, taking a few days off for spring break. And after a wild finish to basketball season, it's been nice to kind of turn everything off for a few days, even though I've actually done more work today than I did last Friday, which was my last day at work.
Okay. Well, that happens. That's okay. So you're not. So I take it you have not gone to Daytona Beach like we used to all do back in the college
I've
days.
not. No. Yeah, I save my beach trips for the summer when there's not as many
Yes.
people there.
Yeah, where it's much, much more calm. Of course, since our last podcast, the Arkansas State Basketball Championships, the state tournament, and then the championships took
Hmm.
place. Man, what a phenomenal tournament and finals it was here in the state of Arkansas. And you got to see all the championships up close.
Yeah, it was an awesome week, and honestly, it never ceases to amaze me the interest level and the excitement for high school basketball in Arkansas. Basketball's king in our state,
Hmm.
and the viewership numbers show it. The attendance in the basketball finals show it. We haven't got the numbers yet back from the TV broadcast, but they're going to show it. It really is amazing how popular basketball is in the state of Arkansas. I mean, you're talking 428,000 views for the state tournament, not including the finals across the state. And we had a couple sold out sessions for the basketball finals, which is a full 6,500. That's the capacity. There's probably a few more people in that. Don't tell the fire marshal. So for a couple of the 5A and the 6A sessions, I mean it was a great 2 weeks of basketball, and it's really nice to showcase just how good that sport is in our state.
And honestly, I think with it being on Arkansas PBS and seeing the finals, Uh, I think it's helped energize and engage people in high school sports in our state.
Yeah, and it is. And what's always great about the basketball finals and the state tournaments too is, I mean, you see every corner of it. I mean, we had pretty much every region of the state
Hmm.
represented in the state finals. Where you're talking Northeast, Southwest, or anywhere in between. And so there was someone from essentially every corner. That means there's basketball fans that may not be a fan of that school, but watch that school throughout the regular season. They're tuning in or they're making the trip to Hot Springs. We don't sell, as far as the AAA, we don't sell weekly passes to the finals, but we get a lot of requests for that. There's a lot of people that is, you know what, I'm going to go to all six sessions. I'm going to watch all 12 games, and I'm just going to spend the weekend in Hot Springs. And that to me, that just kind of shows the dedication that some fans have.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean that would be a good idea. So, and it just gets communities excited and everybody gets involved and I mean it's crazy. Sports has got its good and bad, but one of the great things is how it unites a community when a team makes a run to a state championship.
Hmm. No, it's so cool to see. Whether you're talking about Farmington, who goes back to back, or what I was really impressed with was the crowd that Mark Tree at Class 1A school brought
Hmm.
after losing the finals last year. How important it was for them to go the first title in 20 something years. How cool it was to see Mount Vernon and Nola, which I would say 90% of the state has no clue where it is,
Yeah.
brings 2,000, 2,500 people to watch them cap off a perfect season. I mean, those are the type of things that are really cool to me. And then to watch Little Rock Central's fan base go crazy for their girls basketball program, the first
Hmm.
title in school history, which still amazes me that they've never
Yes.
won a title before. To watch that atmosphere in the student section get behind their girls team was one of the coolest moments by far in the weekend.
Yeah, it was just awesome. Well, we're going to talk more March Madness. Let's get to our headlines. The brackets are out. And first, before we delve into the regions, any surprises to you, seeding wise, or teams that got left out?
Yeah, well, and I think the probably because what we saw last night, which was Tuesday, is I'm shocked that Virginia got in. And then how does an Indiana State that's like
Indiana
number
State.
one in scoring efficiency, averages 85
Hmm.
plus, and has a 25-6 record, get left out? I mean, if you're wanting eyeballs, you certainly don't want the worst offensive efficient team in the country playing, and you want the best one. And somehow the selection committee screwed that up. I don't get too nitpicky. I could get on my soapbox real quick about the play-in games, and I'm not going to because I do that every
Mm-hmm.
year, and
Yeah.
nobody listens to me anymore. But other than that, I mean, if you're splitting hairs about who's number 64, 65, we got issues anyway. Or excuse me, 68 and 69. How
Yeah.
ridiculous is that?
Yeah, it was crazy. At one point during the Colorado State Virginia game, Speedo Davis, who was on the call, mentioned the fact that Virginia had 6 20-point losses over the courses.
Yeah.
He was reading some stuff about Virginia, and you're like, how on earth did they get in? So I thought the Mountain West got unseated, but then it hit me this morning. Okay, the selection committee is made up of who? Athletic directors,
Mm-hmm.
not basketball people. These are the same people who go out and make bad hires, have no concept of what's going on in the trenches. So really, why should we be surprised when they can't
Yeah, I mean,
pick a
you're
field?
exactly right, and we're going to see this moving forward when the college football playoff when it expands to 12.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to be some teams that get in that where you're thinking, okay, how in the world is this happening? They lost by take Oregon for example.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon plays Georgia in the season opener. Was it last year or year before, and loses by
Yeah.
100.
Yeah. Year
Uh,
before
and,
last.
and and so, but they're going to run through their conference, which is terrible in the
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12 that year at least. And then like all of a sudden they're going to be in the playoff. Like we literally saw this on the field that they don't
Mm-hmm.
belong in this selection, but yet you're going to put them in because they've got the resume or they've
Mm-hmm.
got the name brand, and that's the only reason Virginia got in is because of
Oh
what
yeah.
obviously Tony Bennett's been able to do. Obviously they won a national championship recently, but they also got bounced as a number one seed in the first round. Like it's like so,
Mm-hmm.
this shouldn't shock anybody that they go out and shoot 25% last night. They're just a bad offensive team that somebody thought that hey, that's a good idea to put them in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean they've been bad offensively all year. They finished third in the ACC. Well, we think ACC, and if you don't know basketball and haven't followed it, you don't realize the
Mm-hmm.
ACC is down this year, severely down.
Yeah.
So you put them in the tournament. Um, Indiana State, nobody wants to, and nobody will play them. That's the other
Yeah.
issue you don't see in football as much. You see with basketball because there's more teams. Well, yeah, nobody wants to go play an Indiana State, even at their place, because there's a chance they'll
Mm-hmm.
get beat. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. But anyway, it happened. So
Mm-hmm.
we move on. Let's go ahead and break it down by regions. We'll talk first about the East, and we got the graphic up. Anything jump out at you in the East? I know it's kind of hard to read, but anything jump out at you in the East? Other than
No, I
UConn got
mean,
the hardest path, don't you think?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, to me, UConn is so good, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I've got them making a serious deep run.
Hmm.
Hot take for me, taking the number one seed to make a deep run. I didn't pay enough attention to the Big 12 to realize that Iowa State was going to be a 2 seed. And
Yeah.
obviously, the win over Houston in the Big 12 championship game that jumps off to you, and the way they played down the stretch. I think they beat Baylor,
Hmm.
had some really good wins down the stretch. I mean, so that part's a little intriguing. Auburn is who they are. I mean, you could see Auburn making to the Final Four. You could see Auburn losing on the first weekend.
Yeah.
It's in San Diego State was the darling from a year or two ago.
Yeah. Made the
So
Final
that
Four
potential
last year.
Auburn San Diego, yeah, that potential Auburn San Diego State matchup's fun. FAU being in that regional, so you're talking 2 Final Four teams, 3 Final Four teams from last year, all in that region.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so when you really break it down, that is kind of a tough draw for UConn, but I think they're so much better than everybody else that it doesn't matter who you line up in front of them.
Yeah, it's just interesting. UConn could face last teams from last year's Final Four in the second and third round,
Yeah,
and they're the number
and then
one
they get
overall
in the Elite
seed.
Eight. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
mean it's
wild.
just crazy. So, did you have any big upsets in the East region?
Let's take a peek here. I've got FAU. I had Duquesne beating actually got two of them. I've got the 11 seed
Ooh,
Duquesne beating BYU. Duquesne making their
okay.
first tourney appearance in I think 49 years.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take that one, and then I've got Drake beating Washington State, which is
Yeah.
10-7, not a huge upset, but I do have. So I've got two double-digit seeds in the East advancing to the second round.
Okay. And you've got UConn coming out.
I've got UConn beating Iowa State, so I kind of went chalk
Yeah.
there. I got UConn versus San Diego State, and then Illinois versus Iowa State, and then I've got UConn beating Iowa State there.
I've got BYU beating Illinois in round two, but I've got Iowa State and UConn, and with UConn advancing. So not, nothing too but nothing would surprise us. I don't think this year, given the year we've had in college basketball.
No,
So
I agree. I mean, it's kind of where college basketball has gone, especially with since the transfer portal's really taken off. I mean, nothing really shocks you anymore. We don't see as many of those 12-5 upsets, but we're certainly seeing a lot of 10s and 11s pull upsets of late.
no question. All right. So next, let's go to the Midwest Division and we look at the brackets as they were unveiled on CBS. Purdue. You would think Purdue will get out of the first game because they've got to play the winner tonight's play in between Montana
Yeah.
State and Grambling. Anything else? Or well, obviously Kansas with McCullers not playing. Sanford's now
Hmm.
the hot pick. Some spicy matchups in this one. McNeese, Gonzaga.
Yeah. So that was what really jumped out to me is about the matchups and the committee, men's and women's both, but mind you,
Hmm.
they tried to project the matchups. Obviously, everybody's wanting to see Gonzaga, Kansas in round two, and then Purdue, Kansas in round three. But you mentioned McNeese, obviously the story of Will Wade and what he's been able to
Yes.
bounce back that program. But like that they try to like Rick Barnes versus Texas again in that 2-7, that
Hmm.
Texas Tennessee. I almost feel like the committee is almost force feeding potential matchups more than they are building a good bracket. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's almost like they're looking for storylines and they're
Mm-hmm.
putting the actual basketball that took place on the court off in the corner. So
Correct. Yeah,
any.
it's all about hey, what can we get the most eyeballs on? And of course, Tennessee Texas a 2-7 is a good matchup anyway. But then you add the Rick Barnes dynamic. Obviously, it's been a
Hmm.
long time since he's been at Texas. A lot of people might
Yes.
even forget about that. But like, okay, let's force feed that and put that in prime time.
Yeah. But do you think honestly it generates any more? I mean, March
No,
Madness, it's like the Super Bowl. It's kind of a known entity, so it's not really going to add a whole lot of the casual viewer with these crazy storylines, don't you think?
no, it's not. But like, so if you're flipping the channels and you're a casual fan and you see Kansas versus Gonzaga, even though this year they're not the perennial national powers or maybe even title contenders, you're immediately stopping and watching that game.
Hmm.
And so I think that's what they're shooting for, especially in rounds two and on. Is like okay because the casual fan is going to turn on Kansas Gonzaga, and now we're going to get them hooked. And now we're taking care of our TV partners by saying, hey, we're gonna put that game on TBS at prime time at 8 o'clock. I have no idea when that game is slotted
Yeah.
for, but that's essentially what they're thinking about. They're thinking about okay, how can we turn this into the NFL model and put huge games in every window?
Yeah, true. True TV, of course, is where you want to be
Yeah.
for your game.
Lizard
And
Lick Towing, followed by
yes,
Gonzaga,
yes,
Kansas.
and Practical Jokers with what's his name, Eric Idle or whatever, the guy with the big fro. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see those promos like crazy, and the Capital One commercial like nuts over the next 3 weeks. Any
Yes.
upsets in the Midwest for you? Who comes out?
Yeah. So I've got Oregon beating South Carolina, even though South
Hmm.
Carolina played really really well this year in the SEC. That was my one upset, if you will. I do have Texas beating Tennessee,
Mm.
but that's pretty much it. I went pretty much chalk. I got Purdue over Creighton in the Elite Eight.
I've got Creighton coming out. I've got McNeese knocking off Purdue and getting to the Elite Eight. I
Wow.
have Sanford over Kansas, but that's not an upset. I've got McNeese over Gonzaga. I took Colorado
You got a
State over
12-13
Texas.
matchup.
Yeah,
So you have a
I've
12-13.
I've got one of those Cinderellas to the Sweet 16. I'm with you. I've got Oregon over South Carolina. I've got Colorado State beating Texas. I think Texas is overrated. And
Yeah.
Colorado State
It
beats
looked
Tennessee. Rick Barnes cannot get out of the first weekend to save his life. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I didn't pick Colorado State and that one was intriguing is because
hmm,
they had to play last night. I mean,
yeah,
granted, they weren't tested. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Virginia, but you're
the
making them play an
travel.
extra game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's never conducive.
Yeah. The nice thing is they've got to go to Charlotte, which is not too bad from Dayton. but like, who's the other one? Well, I don't think anyone's got to travel extreme distance this year. So, we'll see. All right. So we'll move on to our next region, which is the South. The South region, our number one seed, the Houston Cougars, who got just boat raced in the Big 12 final, which, again, how much does the conference tournament really mean? What jumps out at you in the South?
I mean, they're begging for obviously Houston Duke. I mean, that's what everybody wants to
Mm-hmm.
see. There maybe even Duke, Kentucky, Houston, Kentucky. Marquette's going to be really interesting
Yes.
coming out of that South. I don't see a lot of upsets just because I had to pick one. At least I felt like I did. I picked NC State to beat Texas Tech in that 11-6 matchup. I've got a lot
Yep.
of. Do I have all 4 11 seeds advancing? I know I've got at least 3 apparently. No, so I've got 3 11 seeds advancing. But this one seems very, very chalky. I mean, I've got 1-4 versus 2-3 in the Sweet 16. Houston beating Kentucky in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, this one strikes me as maybe the weakest region, and
Mm-hmm.
Houston's not the number one overall. I've got James Madison over Wisconsin. I took Oakland over Kentucky. Uh, I can't. I just his name escapes me. The Oakland coach. He's been there for like 37 years. His teams
Yeah.
always play hard. Kentucky doesn't play any defense. That could get dicey. Boise State over Florida. Of course, they've got to beat Colorado tonight. Marquette. Marquette with Kubalik coming back and not played. That's always an interesting dynamic, but you can probably get through the first weekend. I've got ultimately Houston coming out, but I don't know. I think Duke James Madison's a buzzer beater game because
Okay.
people forget Duke lost to Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Arkansas is not very good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. And do we overemphasize, like NC State looked great in the conference tournament, but 5 games in 5 days. Now you've got all the media attention. These guys are tired.
Mm-hmm.
How hard do you practice to get set up? Everybody and your dog's coming out. It's easy to get distracted. We've covered Arkansas when in this situation when they're getting ready, and it's crazy the media circus that ensues for the NCAA tournament. I mean, people come out of nowhere to cover the
Yeah.
team. The Tulsa stations come over, all Little Rock's there. It's like it's distraction central. And it's
Mm-hmm.
tough. It's tough, I think, for teams that haven't been there to deal with all that extra attention.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like, how do you handle that spotlight? But with North Carolina State, I mean, they're in that Charlotte market. I mean, they're
Yeah.
used to like just people kind of coming out of the woodwork. But they're also used to mostly being second fiddle behind, Carolina, Duke, even Wake Forest baseball in recent years. So I don't know. I think they can carry a little bit of that momentum over, but I can't see them winning multiple games because 5 games in 5 days is going to take a ton out of you.
Yeah.
I think they can carry a little adrenaline over for it, but I just can't see them getting out of the first weekend.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. All right. Let's go to the final region, which is the West. The number one seed out West, North Carolina. Anything jump out at you surprise wise in this region? Some interesting matchups, I think, in the first
Yeah,
round.
and this is the one region I've got a little chaos. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we're getting force fed the North Carolina versus Michigan State, Tom Izzo and Carolina matchup. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that one was almost set up to a T. So don't have anything crazy. I've got Nevada beating Dayton in that 10-7. I do have Michigan State winning, but that's when it kind of goes off. I've got Michigan State pulling the upset of Carolina. I've
Mm.
I've got Baylor over Alabama, a 3 versus a 4 in the Elite Eight to advance to the Final Four. So I actually have Baylor coming out of the Big 12 to get to the Final Four. So round one, pretty chalky in this one, but round two, I think there's a chance for some really good matchups. I mean, you're talking Baylor Clemson, Alabama St. Mary's. I mean, Arizona being there. I just don't know how good the Pac-12 schools are, to be honest, in
Yeah.
their last hurrah as a league.
Yes. Oh, I think for sure this is the chaos region. I've got all sorts of crazy upsets. I've got Grand Canyon over St. Mary's. I took Charleston over Alabama, New Mexico over Clemson. Um, I'm with you on Nevada. I think New Mexico takes out Baylor. Arizona beats New Mexico. Grand Canyon advances and then takes out North Carolina. Arizona
Wow.
beats Grand Canyon to go to the Final Four.
Yeah, so I can't pick Grand Canyon. They fired my boy Dan Marley a few years ago, so I just
Okay.
can't support them.
Yeah. I did watch, I think it's the West Coast final. Man, they are athletic, though. Woo! They get up and down the floor. They're fun to watch. And their student section travels. Of course, if my conference tournament was in Vegas, yeah. I mean, Lord, can you be so fortunate?
Yeah, so you don't really have to convince your student section to come to a conference tournament when it's in Vegas, right?
No. How awesome would that be? And how long before the SEC moves their tournament to Vegas? So
Yeah, might as well. I mean, before too long, the UNLV is going to be in the SEC with the conference realignment's been. So why not?
yes. Well, and one final thing as we go back to the March Madness headline, Sankey is adamant in getting more weak Power Five teams like Virginia into the tournament, like an A&M, who I don't know if they really belong. We're going to see more of that. It's like you have a conference tournament. That's your opportunity to get these teams in.
Hmm. I mean, who wants to see Arkansas play more games? Who wants to see A&M or Virginia play more games? I don't. That's the
No.
reason they have the NIT, or maybe even opt out of the NIT, like Oklahoma did. Like we don't need to see that. I mean, you have 30, 33 games to lay out your resume, and if you can't get it done in that span, why should we reward you while Indiana State goes 26-5, and yet they're sitting at home? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Oh, I agree. It's just it's broken, and I don't know how we fix it, but we'll see what can happen. And speaking of which, let's talk about De Los Oinkers. Idle in March did not see this coming. I mean, three straight Sweet 16s, two straight Elite Eights, and you missed the tournament, and now everybody's going
Yeah.
in the portal. They're portal hunting. I don't know. I don't know that you can turn it around in the portal in 1 year.
Yeah, you can. You just said they were in three straight Sweet 16s and an Elite Eight. So how can you say that they can't turn it around in the portal? Is
But
it
those,
sustainable? Yeah, maybe. I mean,
okay.
everybody else is doing it. Uh, the problem with what Musselman does with the
Hmm.
program is every year is brand new. You can't take momentum from last year to next year. But the good thing is you can't carry this bad stuff over because there's only going to be two players, maybe three on the roster that were even there to remember
Hmm.
it. And the odds are what we've seen the last few years, most of the coaching staff's going to be gone too.
Hmm.
So there's not going to be a lot of carryover from year to year with Musselman, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, you have to start over, but look at this year's roster, Blair.
Hmm.
Like, say, okay, you can have your pick of anybody. Who do you
Yeah.
want back? I'll give you three names, and that's it out of the 15
Three?
man roster.
I
I'll
don't
give
even
you
know if there's
Battle,
three. Okay.
give me Mark, and somehow the NCAA grants Makai Mitchell an 11th year of eligibility.
Okay.
That's all I want.
Yeah.
That's the
No.
only three players from this team I would want.
Yeah. No. You're right. To me, that's what makes the portal hard, and because the previous teams had enough of a carryover, so there was a little consistency, and that helped. But when everything's fresh every year, I think it's hard to get
Yeah,
it going. And if you miss on your talent evaluation, which they missed extremely hard on this year,
yeah.
it makes it very hard. I mean, because you look at where
Well,
these guys going out are getting interest from, not a high level.
and it started a couple years ago, and this is going to sound really ugly because I work for our state association. When you have high level high school kids, you feel obligated to offer them and bring them in.
Hmm.
Darien and Florida Joseph Pinion were not SEC players.
Yeah.
Never should have been on campus in first place. And that's two spots. And obviously, Forward left after last year. Now Pinion's already announced that those are Arkansas State, Central Arkansas players.
Hmm.
And Ford had a pretty good year at A State. I don't know that Pinion could play at UCA. Maybe he can. I don't
Hmm.
think so. As my dog agrees. He's chirping in the
Yeah.
background. Uh, but so you miss on those. So there's two of your 15, and
Hmm.
then you've obviously got some walk-on spots, and so now you're down to like 10. And the guys coming back this year that were supposed to be the keys of the cog,
Hmm.
Devo Davis, absolute bust, has
Hmm.
done nothing since really his defensive performance in that one game against Texas Tech a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trevon Brazile was a shell of himself. Jalen Graham was so inconsistent that you couldn't count on him, even though offensively he was pretty good, but didn't play a lick of defense like the rest of the team this year.
Mm-hmm.
Minifield was obviously a clear miss, and that's why he's already hit the portal. Blocker, I just don't think is big and strong enough to play in the SEC. He got pushed around. And so now you're starting to add all this up. And granted, we've had the luxury of watching this team for 30, 35 games. And so now we know why they didn't succeed. But think about last year and the year before and the year before that. Musselman can recruit, and he knows, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this. He learns to adjust to the game pretty well. And I think that's why they've got a chance to be pretty successful moving forward. I don't think this is this is going to be a 5-year deal.
Okay. Well, I hope so. I hope that they can get it going. But I think they do have to recruit better and maybe get away from the high profile portal recruit guys and just go get some players. Guys can score.
Yeah. I mean, it's like Mekhi Mitchell wasn't a high profile portal guy, right? And it took him a couple years.
But he was a good addition.
Yes, he was. And so
those
are the ones you need.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think they went out and got too many guys who needed the ball this year. Yes. Battle, Mark, Minifield, like high volume shooters. Devo, for some reason, thought he was a high volume shooter. So you got to limit those, and go get your role players. Go get your guys who average 8 and 8, 10 and 10. Don't go get 5 20-point scorers, because guess what? It's not going to translate to sharing the basketball. Kentucky did that a lot. Guys coming from high school. And that's when Calipari kind of really took it on the chin, is because he had all these superstars, all these McDonald All-Americans, and they all wanted to shoot. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you've got to adjust and recruit role players.
Indeed. And another thing to remember, a lot of these cats, there's a reason they're in the portal, and it's not always good. So,
well, yes and no, because I saw a tweet this morning. Alyssa Orange retweeted it, and that's why I saw it. I don't know who posted it. The transfer portal has only been open 2 days in women's college basketball. 37 schools leading score is in the portal.
Wow.
37 leading scores, including Arkansas State's, mind you. Mm-hmm. And Arkansas State's is coming to Arkansas, but 37 schools are losing their leading score to the portal. So it's not a talent thing, but I don't know how that happens. Like you literally are the best player on your team statistically, and you're like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go somewhere. That's what's wrong with college basketball.
I'd be curious to know how many of those kids are leaving teams that are in the NCAA tournament.
I haven't seen any that said they're leaving a team that's in the tournament.
Yeah. They're leaving teams.
There's a lot that are in the NIT or the CBI, which shameless plug, as we've got a minute left, calling the WNIT Central Arkansas St. Louis game tomorrow night.
Nice.
So tune in to ESPN Plus for that.
Okay, I was going to say where can we find that? ESPN.
Yeah, 6:30 tip off, and from the beautiful Ferris Center in Conway.
Awesome. We'll look forward to that. Let's get quickly one more headline. Razorback Baseball 3-0 start. Missouri's terrible, but hey, you'll take a 3-0 start, right?
23-1 was the run differential this weekend. Good Lord, Arkansas is good. Good Lord, Missouri is really, really bad.
I was disappointed they didn't run rule them. It came this close, because I hate Missouri now because of the Battle Line rivalry. But hey,
it just means more.
Credit to the game management. They're finally holding people up during an at-bat, keeping them from going to the seat. Now if we could just get cup holders.
That's the one thing that hockey does well, is like they hold people from coming in during play. I like that Arkansas added that.
Yes, provided the usher is there. Well, hey, hit us up on Twitter.